Captain Lee Daeho stared at the strange readings on his screen. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he did not notice. Something big was moving through space toward their research station. Something very big. Sora, come look. At this, he called to Engineer Park Sora, who was working on the station's power systems nearby. Park Sora wiped her hands on a cloth and walked over. She looked at the screen and her eyes grew wide. "Those are ships, Captain. Lots of them." "I know," Lee said quietly. "But they are not human ships." The Proxima research station was small. Only 200 people worked there. They studied the nearby star and ran experiments. It was peaceful work far from Earth. Most of the crew were scientists, not soldiers. "Should we send a message to Earth?" Sora asked. Lee thought about this. It would take years for a message to reach Earth. These ships would be here in days. "Send the message," he said, "but I do not think help will come in time." Far away on the largest alien ship, Admiral Kethavar looked at the small human station on his own screen. He was tall and had gray skin. His people, the Vorthok, ruled many worlds across the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of different alien races. "It is tiny," said Commander Velnok, who stood beside him. "A few energy weapons should destroy it easily." Kethavar nodded. "These humans look weak. Their technology seems basic. This will be simple." The Vorthak had been traveling through space for thousands of years. They had powerful ships and strong weapons. When they found new worlds, they always won the fights that followed. The Vorthak Empire grew bigger and stronger with each victory. "Send them a message," Kethavar ordered. "Tell them to surrender. Some races are smart enough to give up without a fight." On the human station, Lee received the alien message. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. "Submit or die." Lee looked around the station's control room. Dr. Kim Taeman was there, along with Engineer Park Sora and 15 other people. They were not warriors. They were teachers and scientists and workers. "What do we do?" asked Dr. Kim. His voice shook a little. Lee was quiet for a long moment. He had served in Earth's small defense force before coming to the station. He knew about fighting, but these people did not. Still, something inside him refused to simply give up. "We tell them no," Lee said. Everyone stared at him. "Captain," Sora said carefully, "we only have basic shields and a few mining lasers. They have warships." "I know," Lee replied, "but we are human. We do not bow to anyone." Lee sent a simple message back to the alien fleet. "This is human territory. Leave now or face the consequences." On the Vorthak flagship, Kethavar laughed when he read the response. "Consequences? What consequences can these primitives offer us?" "Perhaps it is a bluff," suggested Velnok. "Perhaps," Kethavar agreed, "but it does not matter. Begin the attack. Destroy their station and take any survivors as slaves." 3 Vorthak cruisers moved forward. Each ship was 10 times bigger than the human station. Their weapons could punch through thick armor and their shields could stop powerful attacks. The cruisers had fought in hundreds of battles across the galaxy. On the research station, alarms began ringing. Lee ran to the control center while Sora hurried to the weapons. "Systems. 3 ships coming at us," reported Dr. Kim from the sensors station. "They are charging weapons." Lee's mind raced. The station had mining equipment, not military weapons. But miners needed to break apart asteroids, and asteroids were tough. "Sora, can you link all the mining lasers together?" he called out. "Maybe," she replied, working quickly at her console. "It will overload the power systems, but it might work for one shot." "Do it," Lee ordered. Then he spoke to everyone on the station through the communication system. "All hands prepare for battle. We are going to show these aliens what humans are made of." The first Vorthak cruiser fired its main weapon. A bright beam of energy shot toward the human station. Lee had ordered everyone to move to the station's center where the walls were thickest. The beam hit the outer section and burned through metal and equipment, but the main structure held. "Shields are down to 30%, reported Dr. Kim. "Mining laser is ready," called Sora. But Captain, if we fire at full power, we might blow out all our systems. Then we better make it count, Lee said. He looked at the screen showing the approaching cruiser. It was so close he could see details on its hull. Fire. The station's mining equipment was designed to cut through the hardest rocks in space. When Sora linked all the lasers together and fired them at once, the beam that shot out was incredibly powerful. It hit the Vorthak cruiser right in the center. The alien ship's shields tried to stop the beam, but they were designed to handle normal weapons. The mining laser was different. It cut through the shields like they were not there and burned deep into the cruiser's hull. On the Vorthak flagship, alarms began ringing. "Sir, the Blade of Conquest is badly damaged," reported a crew member. Kethvar could not believe what he was seeing. How? It was one shot from a research station. The damaged cruiser tried to retreat, but Lee was not finished. While Sora worked to restore power, Dr. Kim had been studying the alien ships. "Captain, I think I found something," Dr. Kim called out. "These ships use a lot of electronic systems. If we could create a strong electromagnetic pulse..." Sora understood immediately. "The reactor backup systems. If we overload them, we could create a massive EMP burst." "Will it work?" Lee asked. "It might," Sora replied. "But it will definitely destroy our station's electronics too." Lee watched as the second Vorthak cruiser moved closer. More alien ships were coming behind it. Soon, they would have too many enemies to fight. "Do it," he decided. Sora began overloading the station's backup reactors. It was dangerous work. One mistake and the whole station would explode. But she was the best engineer on the station, and she did not make mistakes. The electromagnetic pulse burst out from the station like an invisible wave. It hit the approaching Vorthak ships, and their electronic systems began failing. Lights went out. Weapons stopped working. Engines shut down. The second cruiser, caught in the middle of the pulse, lost all power. It began drifting in space, helpless. "Now," Lee shouted to his crew, "use the emergency thrusters. Ram them." The research station was not built for ramming, but it was solid. Lee fired all the station's positioning thrusters and sent it crashing into the powerless Vorthak cruiser. The crash was terrible. Both ships were badly damaged, but the alien cruiser had been built for space battles, not for being hit by a spinning research station. Its hull cracked open, and the ship began breaking apart. On the Vorthak flagship, Kethvar watched in shock as his second cruiser died. "This is impossible," he said. "They are primitives. They should not be able to fight us like this." The third cruiser held back, its commander now afraid to get too close. The human station was clearly more dangerous than it looked. Lee's station was dying too. The crash had broken many systems, and the EMP had destroyed their electronics. But they were still alive, and they still had one more trick. "Sora, are the mining charges still working?" Lee asked. The mining charges were small explosives used to break up asteroids. Sora checked her damaged systems. "Some of them are still good," she reported. "Load them into the cargo launcher," Lee ordered. "If they want to fight us, let's give them a real fight." The cargo launcher was meant to shoot supplies between ships. Now Lee planned to use it to shoot explosives at the enemy. The third Vorthak cruiser finally approached, but its commander was careful. He stayed far away and used long-range weapons to attack the human station. Lee waited until the alien ship was in the right position. Then he fired the cargo launcher. The mining charges shot out toward the enemy ship like tiny missiles. The Vorthak commander saw them coming and ordered his gunners to shoot them down. Most of the charges were destroyed, but 3 got through. The explosions were small compared to the size of the cruiser, but they hit in exactly the right spots. Sora had programmed them to target the ship's engine systems. The cruiser's engines stopped working, and it began spinning out of control. "Retreat," Admiral Kethvar ordered. His fleet. He could not believe what had happened. 3 of his best cruisers had been destroyed or disabled by a small research station with basic weapons. As the Vorthak ships pulled back, Lee collapsed into his chair. Around him, his crew cheered weakly. They had won, but barely. "Captain," Dr. Kim called out, "We are getting a message from the alien fleet." Lee listened as the translation system worked on the alien words. Admiral Kethvar's voice came through, angry and confused. "What kind of weapons do you humans have?" the alien admiral demanded. "What kind of warriors are you?" Lee thought about the question. He looked around at his crew of scientists and engineers and researchers. None of them were professional soldiers. They had fought with mining equipment and scientific instruments. "We are just humans," Lee replied. "And this is just a research station." The communication channel went quiet. Lee could imagine the alien admiral trying to understand what that meant. On the Vorthak flagship, Kethvar stared at his screen in disbelief. If this was just a research station with civilian scientists, what would real human military forces be like? But Kethvar did not know the most important thing. The Proxima research station was one of humanity's most remote and lightly defended positions. The people there were some of. The news of Admiral Kethvar's defeat spread through Vorthak space like fire. In the great halls of the Empire's capital world, military commanders gathered to hear the impossible story. 3 cruisers? Grand Admiral Zixthok asked, his voice filled with disbelief. He was the supreme commander of all Vorthak forces, a veteran of 1,000 battles across the galaxy. "Yes, Grand Admiral," Kethvar replied. He stood before the War Council, his gray skin darker with shame. The human station used weapons we had never seen before. They fought like demons. Around the circular chamber, other Vorthak officers whispered among themselves. Some laughed quietly. Others looked worried. The Vorthak Empire had never lost ships to such a small enemy force. "You were careless," declared Admiral Thexmar from across the room. "Primitive species sometimes have lucky moments, but they cannot stand against proper military might." Kethavar's eyes flashed with anger. "I was not careless. These humans are different. They think differently than other species we have conquered." Grand Admiral Zixthok held up a clawed hand for silence. He had ruled the Empire's military for 50 years. He had seen confident admirals become too proud, and he had seen good officers broken by unexpected defeats. "Tell me about their weapons," Zixthok commanded. Kethvar described the mining laser that had cut through shields like they were made of paper. He told them about the electromagnetic pulse that had disabled his ship's systems. He explained how the humans had used simple mining charges to cripple a battlecruiser. "Crude but effective," admitted Admiral Velkara, the Empire's chief weapons specialist. "But these are the tools of miners and engineers, not warriors. A real military would have proper defenses." "That is exactly my point," Kethvar said urgently. "If their civilians can fight like this, what can their soldiers do?" The council chamber fell quiet. Around the galaxy, the Vorthak Empire ruled over 847 star systems. They had conquered races with powerful technology, fierce warriors, and ancient wisdom. But they had always won because they understood their enemies. These humans were a mystery. Grand Admiral Zixthok made his decision. "I will lead a proper conquest fleet to human space. 50,000 ships should be enough to crush any resistance and teach these newcomers their place." On the distant world of Earth, Colonel Kim Jae-sung received the emergency message from the Proxima research station. He read Captain Lee's report 3 times before he could believe it. The colonel sat in his office at the Terran Defense Command, looking out at the blue oceans of humanity's home world. Earth was peaceful. Most humans had never seen an alien, never mind fought one. Kim picked up his communication device and called his superior. "General, we have a situation. Unknown aliens have attacked one of our research stations." Within hours, meetings were happening all across Earth's government and military. Dr. Choi Min-ji, the planet's leading expert on alien technology, was called in to study the data from the battle. "Fascinating," Dr. Choi said as she looked at the sensor readings from the Vorthak ships. "Their technology is advanced but not impossible to understand. Energy-based shields, plasma weapons faster than light engines. Very standard for what we expected from spacefaring aliens." "Can we fight them?" Colonel Kim asked. Dr. Choi was quiet for a moment. "The research station crew did well with what they had, but if these aliens come back with more ships, our outer colonies will need help." Kim nodded. Earth's military was small compared to the planet's population. Most humans were farmers, teachers, artists, and workers. The Terran Defense Force existed mainly to keep peace between the colonies and handle emergencies. I will send orders to the colonial militias, Kim decided. Every settlement needs to prepare defenses. Across human space, ordinary people received the news that aliens existed, and some of them were hostile. The response was typically human. They got to work. On the mining colony of New Sol, Administrator Han Gitai gathered his people in the main hall. "We need to turn our mining equipment into weapons," he announced, "and we need to do it fast." The miners nodded. They were tough people who worked in dangerous conditions every day. The idea of fighting aliens was scary, but not impossible. "The asteroid breakers can be modified," suggested Chief Engineer Yoon Soo-jin. "If we link them together like that research station did, we can create powerful defensive weapons." On the farming world of New Busan, the colonists had a different approach. They were growing food for the other human colonies, so they needed to protect their crops and their transport ships. "We can hide weapons in our cargo containers," said Transport Captain Nam Ho-seok. "The aliens will think we are just carrying food, but we will be ready to fight." The agricultural workers began training with hunting rifles and improvised explosives. They learned to use their farm vehicles as weapons platforms and their knowledge of the land as a tactical advantage. On New Daegu, the industrial colony, workers started building small warships in their factories. The ships were simple but tough, designed by people who understood how to make things that worked under harsh conditions. "We are not soldiers," admitted factory supervisor Lee Kyung-mi as she watched the first ship roll out of the assembly building. "But we know how to build things that last." Months passed. The colonial militias trained and prepared while Earth's government tried to understand what they were facing. Then the long-range sensors detected something that made everyone's blood run cold. 50,000 alien ships were heading toward human space. Grand Admiral Zixthok commanded the largest Vorthak fleet ever assembled for a single conquest. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was a massive warship that had destroyed entire civilizations. Around it flew thousands of cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. "The humans have had time to prepare," his aide warned as they approached the outer edge of human territory. "It does not matter," Zixthok replied confidently. "No primitive species can stand against the full might of the Empire. We will crush them quickly and completely." The first human world the Vorthak found was New Sol, the mining colony. Zixthok expected to see surrender messages as soon as his fleet appeared. Instead, the miners opened fire immediately. The modified asteroid breakers hit the Vorthak ships with concentrated beams of energy that could crack moons in half. The alien shields held, but barely. "Return fire," Zixthok ordered. "Destroy their weapons platforms." But as the Vorthak ships moved closer, they discovered that the human weapons platforms were mobile. The mining vehicles could move around the colony, making them hard to target. Worse, the miners knew every crater and valley on their world. The battle lasted for 3 days. When it ended, New Sol was badly damaged but still free. The Vorthak had lost 200 ships to weapons that were supposed to be industrial tools. "How?" Zixthok demanded when he read the casualty reports. His tactical officer studied the battle data. "The humans use the terrain against us. They know their own worlds better than we do, and their weapons are more powerful than we expected." The next world was New Busan, the farming colony. Zixthok was more careful this time. He sent scouts ahead and used long-range weapons to attack from a distance. The farmers seemed helpless at first. Their world had no heavy industry and no obvious military installations. The Vorthak fleet moved in confidently. Then the cargo ships launched. What looked like simple food transport suddenly revealed hidden missile launchers and energy cannons. The farm workers were actually well-trained militia who had been practicing coordinated attacks for months. The battle became a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the farm fields and storage facilities. Every barn could hide weapons. Every transport ship could be a trap. The Vorthak won, but it cost them 800 more ships and took 2 weeks of fighting. "These are not normal civilians," Zixthok's War Council concluded. "They fight with the skill of trained soldiers, but they are still using civilian equipment." pointed out Fleet Commander Nalvex. "When we face their actual military, it should be easier." Zixthok was not so sure anymore. If human farmers and miners could destroy 1,000 of his ships, what would happen when they met real human warriors? The industrial world of New Daegu gave him his answer. The humans there had built a fleet of small warships. The vessels were crude compared to Vortak technology, but there were hundreds of them, and they were piloted by people who understood exactly how their ships worked. The human ships used tactics the Vorthak had never seen. They would ram damaged alien vessels, using their own ships as weapons. They coordinated their attacks perfectly, striking weak points in Vorthak formations. Commander Oh Dongwook led the defense fleet from his converted factory ship. He had been building machines all his life, and he knew how to break them too. Hit their engine clusters, he ordered his pilots. Those big ships cannot turn fast if their engines are damaged. The battle was fierce. The human ships were outgunned, but they were also more flexible. When a Vorthak cruiser destroyed one human vessel, 3 more would appear to take revenge. In the end, the Vorthak won again, but they lost 3,000 ships doing it. Grand Admiral Zixthok sat in his command chair, staring at the casualty reports. In 3 battles, he had lost over 4,000 vessels. His conquest fleet was still huge, but it was no longer invincible. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are..." Emperor Gulamaxis had ruled the Vorthak Empire for 200 years. In all that time, he had never received a report like the one Grand Admiral Zixthok was sending him. The Emperor sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the Imperial Palace, his ancient eyes reading the battle reports from human space. Around him, the greatest minds of the Empire waited for his judgment. "Explain to me," the Emperor said slowly, "how 50,000 of our finest ships have been held back by farmers and miners." "Your Majesty," Zixthok replied through the communication system, "these humans are not like other species we have conquered. They adapt quickly. They use their own tools as weapons. They fight with determination we have rarely seen." The Emperor's advisor, Ancient Kolthera, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps we underestimated their numbers. Our intelligence suggested they controlled only a few dozen worlds." "Numbers mean nothing," the Emperor declared. "The Zephyrian Confederacy had 1,000,000 worlds when we conquered them. The crystalline hegemony had weapons that could destroy stars. Both fell before our might." He stood from his throne, his impressive height making him tower over his courtiers. "I will not allow a handful of primitive worlds to resist the Empire. Send every ship we have. Call in the fleets from all sectors. These humans will learn what it means to defy Gulamaxis." Across the galaxy, Vorthak fleets began moving toward human space. From the industrial worlds of the core sectors came massive factory ships that could build new vessels during battle. From the outer rim came the feared Death Legions, elite troops who had never known defeat. The Empire mobilized 200,000 warships, the largest fleet in galactic history. Every vassal species was ordered to contribute ships and soldiers. The Klaxon provided their bioships. The Metallic Collective sent their robot fleets. The Psionic Brotherhood offered their mind warriors. It was a force that had never been assembled before, one that could conquer entire galactic arms. On Earth, General Han Subin received the intelligence reports about the approaching alien armada. She stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Headquarters, studying the holographic display that showed the massive enemy fleet. 200,000 ships, she said quietly to her staff. "They are bringing everything they have." "General," asked her aide, Lieutenant Commander Park Jin-ho, "should we evacuate the outer colonies?" Han considered this. The colonial militias had fought bravely, but they could not stop such a massive force. However, evacuation would mean abandoning millions of people and everything humanity had built beyond Earth. "No," she decided. "Send activation orders to all Defense Force units. It is time for the real military to show these aliens what we can do." What Grand Admiral Zixthok did not know was that everything he had fought so far was not really humanity's military at all. The colonial militias were volunteers, people who had day jobs and trained part-time. They were brave and clever, but they were not professional soldiers. The Earth Defense Forces were different. General Han had spent 30 years building humanity's real military. While most humans lived peaceful lives, a small number had dedicated themselves to the art of warfare. They trained constantly, studied every form of combat, and prepared for threats that most people never imagined. The Defense Forces had been waiting for this moment since the first reports came back from Proxima. Research Station Lieutenant Yoon Tae-woo was one of those professional soldiers. He piloted a Falcon-class interceptor, a sleek ship designed specifically for space combat. Unlike the converted mining vessels and farm transports the aliens had faced, his ship was built for only one purpose: destroying enemies. Phoenix Squadron, prepare for launch, came the order through his headset. Yoon checked his weapon systems one final time. His ship carried plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and electronic warfare packages that could disable enemy vessels from light years away. More importantly, he had trained for 15 years to use them. Around him, 11 other pilots ran through their own pre-flight checks. Phoenix Squadron was just one unit in just one wing of just one battle group. The Earth Defense Forces had hundreds of such squadrons. The colonial militias had fought with courage and improvised weapons. The Defense Forces fought with precision and tools designed for killing. When the Vorthak Armada reached the Kepler colony, they expected to face more farmers and miners. Instead, they found General Han Soo-bin and the 3rd Defense Battle Group waiting for them. All ships, General Han broadcast to her fleet, engage at will, show them what real soldiers can do. The battle was different from anything the Vorthak had experienced. The human ships moved in perfect formation, their attacks coordinated by advanced tactical computers. When they fired, their weapons hit exactly where they intended. Yoon's squadron swept through the alien formation like a blade through cloth. The Vorthak ships tried to target them, but the human fighters were too fast and too smart. They used electronic countermeasures to confuse enemy sensors and quantum stealth technology to appear and disappear at will. Target the command ship. Yoon ordered his wingman, pilot Song Hae-jung, take out their communications array. Song's ship fired a single quantum torpedo. The weapon phased through the alien ship's shields and exploded inside their communication center. Suddenly, half the Vorthak fleet could not coordinate with the other half. This was warfare as the Defense Forces had been trained to fight it. Not desperate improvisation with mining tools, but calculated destruction with weapons designed by humanity's finest engineers. The Vorthak lost 15,000 ships in the first day of battle. Grand Admiral Zixthok could not understand what was happening. How are they so much stronger than before? He demanded. His tactical officer studied the sensor readings. Sir, these ships are completely different from what we faced before. Their weapons are more powerful, their shields are stronger, and their pilots are much more skilled. But they are the same species, Zixthok protested. How can they be so different? What the Vorthak admiral did not realize was that he was finally fighting humanity's actual military instead of their civilian volunteers. The difference was like comparing a house cat to a tiger. The battle continued for a week. Every day the humans showed new tactics and new weapons. They had ships that could become invisible, missiles that could think for themselves, and soldiers who fought with machine-like precision. Captain O.G. Wan commanded the heavy cruiser, Seoul's Pride. Her ship was armed with antimatter cannons that could punch through the thickest armor. When she fired at a Vorthak battleship, the alien vessel simply ceased to exist. Target the next formation, she ordered her weapons officer. Let us show them what human engineering can accomplish. The Seoul's Pride was not converted from anything else. It had been built in the orbital shipyards around Earth, designed by people who understood exactly how to fight wars in space. Every system was optimized for combat, every weapon carefully tested. When it fired its main guns, entire squadrons of alien ships were destroyed. After 7 days of fighting, the Vorthak had lost 80,000 vessels. Their mighty armada was reduced to scattered groups trying desperately to escape the human fleet. Emperor Golmaxis received the reports in his throne room. For the first time in his long reign, he felt something he had not experienced in centuries: fear. 80,000 ships, he whispered. How is this possible? Ancient Kolthera approached the throne carefully. Your Majesty, perhaps these humans have allies we do not know about, advanced species helping them. No, the Emperor said. The intelligence is clear. These are human ships with human crews. But how can the same species that we have been fighting suddenly become so much more dangerous? In his command ship above, the Kepler colony, General Han studied the fleeing alien vessels. Her forces had won a decisive victory, but she knew the war was not over. The aliens would regroup and try again. Send a message to Earth Command, she ordered. Request permission to pursue the enemy fleet and end this threat permanently. General, her communications officer said, we are receiving a transmission from the alien flagship. Han nodded. Put it through. Grand Admiral Zixthok appeared on the screen, his gray features marked by exhaustion and confusion. General Han, I request a ceasefire to discuss terms. There are no terms, Han replied, coldly. You attacked our people without provocation. The only discussion is your unconditional surrender. You cannot expect us to surrender to a force we do not understand, Zixthok said desperately. Your ships, your weapons, your tactics, they are completely different from what we faced before. What changed? Han considered her answer carefully. The alien admiral seemed genuinely confused, which was interesting. Perhaps their intelligence about humanity was worse than she had thought. Nothing changed, she said finally. You have simply encountered our actual military for the first time. The silence that followed her words stretched for several seconds. On the alien flagship, Zixthok stared at the screen in growing horror. You mean, he said slowly, the forces we fought on the colonies were not your real army? Those were civilian militias, Han confirmed. Farmers, miners, and factory workers who volunteered to defend their homes. Brave people, but not professional soldiers. Zixthok felt the universe shift around him. Everything his empire had believed about humanity was wrong. The Imperial War Council met in emergency session aboard Emperor Galmaxis's flagship, the Infinite Conquest. The massive vessel hung in space at the edge of Vorthak territory, far from the human forces that had shattered their great fleet. Emperor Galmaxis stood before a holographic display showing the remains of their armada. Of the 200,000 ships that had attacked human space, fewer than 60,000 had returned. Many of those were damaged beyond repair. Explain to me, the Emperor said, his voice deadly quiet, how we lost the largest fleet in galactic history to a handful of primitive worlds. Grand Admiral Zixthok stood at attention, his uniform torn from the desperate battles. Your Majesty, they were not primitive. Their technology is advanced, their tactics are sophisticated, and their soldiers fight with skill we have never encountered. Soldiers? Ancient Kolthara leaned forward from his position near the throne. You told us you were fighting farmers and miners. We were, Zixthok replied. At first. But then their real military arrived. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Real military? You mean there are more of them? Spy Master Velkoth stepped forward. He commanded the Empire's intelligence networks, and his reports were always thorough and accurate. Your Majesty, I have been studying all available data about the humans. The situation is troubling. Explain, the Emperor commanded. Velkoth activated a new holographic display. The forces we initially encountered were civilian volunteers, people who had other jobs but trained part-time to defend their homes. They used mining equipment and farm tools as weapons because those were the tools they had. The War Council listened in stunned silence as the intelligence chief continued. The forces that destroyed our main fleet were professional soldiers from something called the Earth Defense Forces. These are people who dedicate their entire lives to warfare. They have ships designed specifically for combat and weapons built, only for destroying enemies. How many of these professional soldiers do they have? Asked Fleet Admiral Nexavara. Velkoth paused. That is the troubling part, Your Majesty. Our intelligence suggests the Earth Defense Forces represent only a small fraction of humanity's total population. Emperor Galmaxis felt something cold settle in his stomach. How small? Less than 3%. The silence that followed was complete. Every officer in the War Council was thinking the same impossible thought. If 3% of humanity had just destroyed the Empire's greatest fleet, what could the other 97% do? There must be more information, the Emperor said. What else do we know about their military capabilities? Velkoth brought up intercepted human communications. We have detected references to multiple numbered battle fleets. The forces we fought appear to have been just one such fleet. How many fleets do they have? Zixthok asked, though he dreaded the answer. Communications intercepts mention at least 12 separate battle fleets. We fought Battle Fleet 3. The War Council erupted in shocked whispers. Admiral Thexamar stood up from his seat. 12 fleets? Each as powerful as the one that destroyed us? There is more. Velkoth continued grimly. We have also detected references to something called the Strategic Reserve, Fortress Worlds, and a defense organization called the Terra Guard. What are those? The Emperor demanded. We do not know, the intelligence chief admitted. But the intercepted communications suggest they are even more powerful than the regular defense forces. Commander Song Hirin sat in the intelligence center of the TDF Vigilant, a deep space reconnaissance ship operating far behind enemy lines. Her mission was to gather information about the Vorthak Empire, but what she had discovered was almost too incredible to believe. Captain, she said to the ship's commander, you need to see this. Captain Ryu Sang-ho joined her at the monitoring station. Song had been intercepting alien communications for weeks, building a picture of the enemy's capabilities and intentions. What did you find? He asked. Song played back a recorded transmission from the Vorthak flagship. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. The aliens believed they had been fighting humanity's full military strength. They think the defense forces are our entire army, Song said in amazement. They have no idea about the reserve fleets, the orbital defense grid, or the Terra Guard. Captain Ryu shook his head in disbelief. They attacked us without understanding what they were fighting? It gets worse, Song continued. From what I can gather, they have been studying us for months, but they focused on our civilian colonies. They never detected our military installations. She brought up a tactical display showing human space. They know about our research stations, our mining, colonies, and our farming worlds. But they never found the fortress worlds. They never detected the shipyards. They have no idea how large our real military is. Captain Ryu considered this information. If the aliens did not understand humanity's true strength, they might make the mistake of continuing the war. That could be disastrous for everyone. Send this intelligence to Earth Command immediately, he ordered. Priority Alpha transmission. Back on the Vorthak flagship, Emperor Golmaxis was receiving even more disturbing reports from his intelligence network. Your Majesty, Velkoth announced, we have discovered something else about the humans. They appear to have artificial intelligence systems controlling some of their military operations. AI? The Emperor leaned forward. How advanced? Very advanced, sir. We detected communication patterns that suggest their tactical systems can think and adapt independently. Some of their ships may be operating without human crews at all. This was the most frightening news yet. The Vorthak Empire had encountered artificial intelligence before, and it was always dangerous. AI systems could process information faster than biological minds, could coordinate attacks across vast distances, and never got tired or afraid. Are you saying they have robot armies? Asked Grand Admiral Zixthok. Possibly, Velkoth replied. But if so, they are more sophisticated than anything we have seen. Their AI appears to work alongside their biological forces, not replace them. Emperor, Golmaxis stood up abruptly. I want to know everything about these humans. Deploy every spy, every probe, every intelligence asset we have. I need to understand what we are really fighting. Yes, Your Majesty. Velkoth bowed. But sir, there is one more thing you should know. The Emperor waited. According to our analysis of their communication networks, the humans have not yet fully mobilized for war. Most of their population is still engaged in peaceful activities. They are fighting us with what appears to be their peacetime military. The eyes? Implications hit the War Council like a physical blow. If the humans could destroy the Empire's greatest fleet without even fully mobilizing, what would happen if they actually went to total war? Your Majesty, ancient Kolthara said carefully, perhaps we should consider negotiating a peace treaty. Emperor Gulmaxis turned to glare at his advisor. The Vorthak Empire does not negotiate with primitives. But Your Majesty, Kolthara continued, what if they are not primitives? What if we have made a terrible mistake? Before the Emperor could respond, new alarms began ringing throughout the flagship. The communications officer hurried to his station. Your Majesty, he called out, we are receiving a transmission from human space. It is addressed to you personally. Put it through, the Emperor ordered. The holographic display activated, showing the image of a human in military uniform. This was Supreme Commander Ryu Dohyun, the overall leader of humanity's military forces. Emperor Gulmaxis, the human said, his voice calm and professional. I am contacting you to offer terms for ending this conflict. You dare to offer terms to me? The Emperor snarled. You will surrender unconditionally or face total destruction. Supreme Commander Ryu's expression did not change. I think there has been a misunderstanding about the nature of this conflict. You seem to believe you have been fighting our full military strength. He paused, letting the words sink in. The forces you have encountered so far represent approximately 2% of our total defensive capability. We would prefer to end this war now before we are forced to escalate further. Emperor Gulmaxis felt the universe tilt around him. 2%? The forces that had destroyed his greatest fleet were only 2% of humanity's military? You are lying, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I will transmit our force disposition data for your review. Supreme Commander Ryu replied. Study it carefully, then decide if you wish to continue this war. The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak War Council in stunned silence. Within minutes, human data began flowing into their computer systems. What they saw destroyed the last of their confidence. Humanity had 12 separate battle fleets, each larger than the one that had defeated them. They had fortress worlds protected by weapons that could destroy moons. They had automated defense networks controlled by artificial intelligences. They had orbital shipyards that could build fleets faster than the Vorthak could destroy them. Most terrifyingly, they had something called the Terra Guard, an elite force that had never been deployed in battle but was apparently equipped with weapons that made their regular military look primitive. Your Majesty, Grand Admiral Zixthok said quietly, we need to face the truth. We are not fighting a primitive species. We are fighting a military power that... Supreme Commander Ryu Do-hyun stood in the command center deep beneath the surface of Earth, looking at displays that showed the true scope of humanity's military might. For the first time since the war began, all of it was waking up. Aegis, he said to the air around him, begin Phase 1 mobilization of all strategic assets. A voice answered from speakers throughout the room, but it was not quite human. Aegis was humanity's greatest secret, an artificial intelligence that had been designed to coordinate Earth's defense against threats beyond imagination. Phase 1 mobilization initiated, Commander, Aegis replied. All TerraGuard units are reporting ready status. Fleet Admiral Nam's first battle fleet is departing Sol system. Fortress world defense grids are coming online. Around the command, center officers who had never worked together before began coordinating the largest military operation in human history. These were not the colonial militias or even the regular defense forces. These were humanity's ultimate guardians. Captain O. Jiwan stood on the bridge of the TDF Eternal Vigilance, flagship of the first battle fleet. The massive ship was larger than most space stations, armed with weapons that could crack continents and protected by shields that had never been tested in battle. Around her flagship, 500,000 other ships moved in perfect formation. These were not converted civilian vessels or even standard military craft. They were humanity's finest war machines built in secret facilities throughout the solar system. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, announced her navigation officer. Aegis, Captain O said, Confirm target coordinates. The artificial intelligence's voice came through the ship's communication system. Target confirmed. Vorthak. Home system. Estimated time to arrival, 14 hours, all fleet elements synchronized. Captain O nodded. Execute jump. The stars around the first battle fleet twisted and vanished as 500,000 ships disappeared into hyperspace, heading directly for the heart of the Vorthak Empire. On the Vorthak homeworld of Corvanin, Emperor Gulmaxis paced nervously in his palace. 3 days had passed since his offer to negotiate, but the humans had not responded. His intelligence networks were reporting strange activities throughout human space. Your Majesty, Spy Master Velkoth hurried into the throne room. We have a problem, a very large problem. What now? The Emperor demanded. Our deep space sensors have detected a massive fleet movement from the human solar system. Hundreds of thousands of ships, all heading directly toward us. The Emperor felt his blood turn cold. How many ships? At least 500,000, Your Majesty. Possibly more. Our sensors cannot get accurate counts because of some kind of jamming technology. Emperor Gulmaxis collapsed into his throne. 500,000 ships was larger than the entire Vorthak navy. It was larger than most species' total population. How long until they arrive? He asked. Less than 12 hours, Your Majesty. The Emperor looked around his throne room at the courtiers and advisors who had served the Empire for centuries. They had conquered galaxies together, ruled over billions of subjects, and never known defeat. Now they were about to face an enemy that could destroy everything they had built. Send a message to all fleet commanders, the Emperor ordered. Recall every ship to defend the homeworld. Call in the vassal species. Mobilize every weapon platform, every defense station, every soldier we have. Your Majesty, Ancient Kolthara said quietly, even if we gather everything, we will have fewer than 200,000 ships. They outnumber us more than 2 to 1. Then we will die fighting, the Emperor declared. The Vorthak Empire has never surrendered, and we will not start now. But even as he spoke brave words, Gulmaxis knew they were facing something beyond their ability to resist. Fleet Admiral Nam Kyung-ho commanded the first battle fleet from his flagship, the TDF Terra's Wrath. He was humanity's most experienced military commander, a veteran of conflicts that most humans had never heard of. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we are receiving telemetry from Aegis. The enemy has gathered approximately 180,000 ships to defend their homeworld. Nam studied the tactical display. The Vorthak fleet was arranged in defensive formations around their home system, with the largest ships protecting the inner worlds where billions of aliens lived. Aegis, he said. Analysis of enemy capabilities? The artificial intelligence processed data from thousands of sensors and spy networks. Enemy forces are concentrated but desperate. Their technology is inferior to current TerraGuard specifications. Estimated probability of successful mission completion, 94%. Nam nodded. The odds were acceptable, but he remembered Supreme Commander Ryu's final orders. Minimize civilian casualties but ensure the Empire's complete surrender. All ships, he broadcast to his fleet, execute Battle Plan Omega. Target military installations only. Avoid population centers. The first battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak home system like an avalanche of metal and energy. The alien defenders had been expecting them, but the reality of facing 500,000 human warships was more terrifying than any preparation could address. Commander Song Hye-rin, now aboard one of the TerraGuard's intelligence ships, watched as the battle began. Her vessel, the TDF Silent Observer, was equipped with sensors that could detect enemy thoughts across light years. Aegis, she said, patch me through to the Vorthak command frequencies. I want to monitor their communications. The artificial intelligence complied, and Song began listening to the enemy's desperate radio chatter. What she heard made her almost feel sorry for them. They have too many ships, one Vorthak commander was saying. We cannot target them all. Where did they get so many vessels? Another voice asked. No species should be able to build fleets this large. It does not matter, a third voice replied, probably a senior officer. We fight until the end. Song shook her head. The Vorthak were brave, but they still did not understand what they were facing. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Vorthak fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single human ship had been lost. Admiral Nam opened a communication channel to the Vorthak homeworld. Emperor Golmaxis, this is Fleet Admiral Nam of the Terran Defense Forces. Your fleet has been neutralized. I am prepared to accept your unconditional surrender. On the planet below, Emperor Golmaxis stared at the screens showing the wreckage of his navy. 500,000 human ships hung in space around his world like stars of death. A single word from their admiral could turn his civilization to ash. The Emperor began, then stopped. For 200 years he had never shown weakness to anyone, but there was no point in pretending anymore. I surrender, he said quietly. The Vorthak Empire surrenders unconditionally. Surrender accepted, Admiral Nam replied. Prepare to receive our terms. But before the formal negotiations could begin, something unexpected happened. Ships began emerging from hyperspace throughout Vorthak territory. Not human ships, but vessels belonging to species the Empire had conquered centuries ago. The crystalline hegemony had returned with a fleet of crystal ships that sang as they flew. The Zephyrian Confederacy brought their bioships that could heal themselves during battle. Dozens of other species that had been enslaved by the Vorthak were reclaiming their freedom. Aegis, Supreme Commander Ryu asked from his command center. On Earth, what is happening? The artificial intelligence processed information from across the galaxy. Analysis indicates that news of the Empire's defeat has spread to their former territories. Subjugated species are using the opportunity to rebel against Vorthak rule. Ryu considered this development. The war had ended faster than anyone expected, but its consequences were spreading throughout the galaxy. Contact Admiral Nam, he ordered. Tell him to establish peacekeeping zones around populated worlds. We do not want this victory to turn into a galactic civil war. On the Vorthak homeworld, Emperor Golmaxis met with Admiral Nam in the Imperial Palace. The human officer was professional but not cruel, speaking with the courtesy of one military leader to another. The terms are simple, Admiral Nam explained. The Vorthak Empire will release all conquered territories and enslaved populations. Your military will be limited to system defense forces. You will provide reparations to species harmed by your expansion. And if we refuse? The Emperor asked, though he already knew the answer. Admiral Nam gestured toward the windows, where the lights of the human fleet could be seen in the night sky. You have seen what we can do with one battle fleet, Emperor. We have 11 more, just like it. The Emperor nodded slowly. I understand. We accept your terms. There is one more thing. Admiral Nam continued. Humanity will establish monitoring stations throughout former Empire territory to ensure compliance with the peace treaty. These stations will be protected by forces sufficient to maintain order. What the Emperor did not realize was that these monitoring stations would become the foundation of something new in the galaxy, a peacekeeping force that would prevent any single species from conquering others the way the Vorthak had done. Months later, Captain OG-1 stood on the observation deck of Terra Station 1, humanity's first permanent base outside the solar system. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of different species coming and going peaceful.